Civilian aircraft, you are in restricted airspace. Respond or you will be intercepted. The pilot in the F-16 didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Protocol had already kicked in, and both jets had flanked the unknown plane, wings steady, weapons idle, but ready. On their screens, the blip in the center remained stubbornly silent. A tiny, battered Cessna skimmed through the early morning sky like it belonged there. Like no one had told it, this part of the map was off limits. No transponder, no radio check, no flight record. Just a ghost flying blind. Back at the command center, silence hung heavy as technicians leaned in, watching radar like it might answer their questions. "Who the hell is that?" someone muttered. The F-16 pilot squinted through his visor, trying to make out the figure inside the old craft. And then, something shifted. His hand froze on the throttle. "Wait," he said quietly. "That's Red Falcon." The name fell like a dropped pin in a war room. The comms didn't respond. No one breathed. Once, Arden Cole had ruled the sky. Not with volume or swagger, but with the kind of control that made chaos kneel. She was never loud in the locker room. She didn't chase glory. But when things got messy, and they always did, she was the one pilots looked for on their six. She was the calm in the storm, the scalpel when everyone else brought hammers. Her record wasn't just clean, it was mythic. Over 200 missions, no friendly fire, no missteps. She had earned the call sign Red Falcon not for flair, but for precision. Every command she gave was backed by instinct that somehow always outpaced the battlefield. By 2012, she was already a quiet legend. Promotions lined up like dominoes. There was talk of command, stars, history. Then came the mission. Northern Syria. Coordinates dropped without briefing. The kind of order that didn't come with context, just speed. She was told it was a terrorist hub. High value, non-negotiable. She climbed into the cockpit and did what she'd always done. Trusted her training, trusted the mission. But what she saw as she neared the target didn't match the file. No sentries, no movement like insurgents. Instead, children chasing a dog across an open courtyard. Clotheslines. Old women sweeping dust from doorsteps. She keyed her mic. "Command. Visual contact with civilians. Requesting confirmation on target." Static. Then orders, flat and absolute. "Proceed." She didn't. Arden banked the jet hard, pulled away from the drop zone, and never looked back. Abort confirmed. Payload secure. Non-combatants present. What followed was noise, reports, reviews, reprimands. The investigation eventually proved she was right. The site had sheltered refugee families, not fighters. She had saved 63 lives. But the silence from her superiors said everything. No trial, no commendation. Just a cold wall where a career used to be. She walked away before they could push her out. And now, years later, she was airborne again. No clearance, no allies, no explanation. Just a whisper of a name in a cockpit that hadn't heard it in a decade. Red Falcon had returned. They didn't court-martial her. They didn't hold press conferences. They simply filed the paperwork, stripped her name from the flight logs, and shut the door. Red Falcon was erased, not with noise, but with deliberate silence. Arden didn't resist. She packed a single duffel bag, handed in her ID, and walked out of the only world she had ever belonged to. Montana became the place where she disappeared, not in shame, but in necessity. She took a small cottage outside a town so quiet it didn't even appear on most maps. The folks there knew her only as Miss Arden, the quiet woman who taught teenagers how to land a Piper Cub in crosswind and reminded everyone to respect the sky. No one asked questions. No one knew what she'd left behind. For nearly a decade, she lived among the mountains like a shadow. Her wings weren't clipped, they were just hidden. Then came the message. It buzzed onto her old flip phone one cold October morning, while she stood on her porch watching fog crawl over the trees. "A misfire's coming. 70 civilians. You still know how to fly? Then fly. Coordinates. Timestamp. 90 minutes. She stared at the screen for a long moment. The number wasn't saved. The message had no signature, but the data was real. The location. A known conflict zone flagged months ago in a classified drone test schedule. She didn't hesitate. At Monstrom Air Force Base, a radar blip appeared on screen, faint, steady, and concerning. The signal came from low altitude, Sector 4, and followed a controlled civilian-like flight path. It wasn't scheduled, it wasn't cleared. Senior Airman Rodriguez flagged it first. "Sir, we've got unknown traffic heading toward Range Echo." His supervisor leaned in. The zone was red, active weapons training in progress. A drone team was prepped for live fire on suspected insurgent coordinates overseas. "Is it broadcasting?" No transponder, no radio. "ETA? 12 minutes. Colonel Hayes didn't blink. "Scramble alert flight, 3 birds up now." The fighters launched fast. Twin roars cracked the Montana air as the F-16s tore from the runway, burners spitting blue fire behind them. In the lead seat was Lieutenant Jake Harper, 28, ambitious, and hungry to make a name. His wingmen flanked tightly as they climbed into intercept position. Harper's HUD acquired the target. A small, twin-engine prop plane flying smooth and low. Altitude, 8,000 feet. Speed, non-threatening. But it wasn't turning. It wasn't talking. "Unidentified aircraft, this is the United States Air Force," Harper called out. "You're in restricted airspace during live weapons operations. Change course or we'll take action." No answer, no wobble, no evasive turn. Standard rules kicked in. Warning shots if no response, then escalation if necessary. Harper's hand hovered over his trigger. His voice, calm but firm, repeated the order. Still, the plane stayed its course. Perfectly level, almost purposeful. He inched closer, closing into visual range. Then, through his visor, he saw something. A familiar silhouette, posture tight, helmet sleek, like muscle memory in human form. His breath caught. He didn't say it yet, but deep down he knew. He was looking at a ghost. Through the narrow canopy glass, Harper caught a flash of color. Worn, faint, but unmistakable. On the starboard wing of the old Cessna, wind-scraped paint clung to a once-proud symbol. A red bird mid-dive. Wings swept back, talons curled in descent. His breath stilled. He had studied that emblem. Not in flight briefings, but in whispered legend. The Red Falcon. It had been scrubbed from official doctrine years ago, but every academy graduate still knew it. The one pilot who had broken ranks to save lives. The one who vanished rather than apologize. Harper gripped the stick tighter. The insignia was real, and whoever was flying that plane wasn't lost. They knew exactly where they were going. "Control, this is Viper 1, he radioed. "Visual confirms Red Falcon emblem on aircraft wing. Request immediate confirmation on pilot identity." A pause. Then a voice came back, clipped and certain. "Negative, Viper 1. That call sign is inactive. No Red Falcon in current registry. Continue intercept protocol." Harper frowned. The answer didn't sit right. He wasn't chasing a mistake. He was watching a ghost glide across the sky like time hadn't touched her. He switched channels. "Viper 2 and 3, stay close. Do not engage unless I say so." The older pilots had told him stories, over beer, off the record. How she'd saved a convoy with a solo dive. How she called off a strike when brass wouldn't listen. They never said her name. But they always said she was right. And now, her plane was veering. Not away from the base. Not toward it either. Sector 7. Harper's heart began to race. The Cessna was drifting with purpose, straight toward the drone command center, where unmanned systems were being calibrated for a launch. One of those launches was scheduled to fire in just under 20 minutes. "Control, be advised," Harper radioed. "Target aircraft not headed for base assets. Flight path matches coordinates for UAV Operations Center. Strongly recommend temporary hold on drone mission queue." No reply. Beneath him, the small craft didn't falter. The kind of calm you only saw in veteran hands. Harper glanced at the timer ticking in his cockpit. 18 minutes. This wasn't evasion. This was intervention. He made a choice. Instead of cutting the Cessna off, he slowed his throttle and held formation. shadowing, watching, waiting. If he was wrong, he'd answer for it later. But his gut screamed he wasn't. Whoever was in that cockpit wasn't trying to harm anyone. They were racing the clock. Inside the Cessna, Arden's fingers moved with a rhythm that lived in her bones. She hadn't touched combat avionics in 12 years, but her hands remembered. She flipped open a recessed panel and accessed a narrowband frequency, a relic from another era, encrypted, untouched since the Cold War, known only to command-level officers and operatives from deep classified air campaigns, Priority Alpha. The system crackled once, then hummed to life. The signal began to pulse. It was designed to cut through everything: encryption barriers, satellite filters, even base-level scramblers. She had one shot to reach someone who'd listen. It was a signal built to break protocol. The Priority Alpha frequency had only one purpose: to cut through every firewall, override every chain of command, and force the right people to listen. It was rarely used, and never lightly. It could delay a war, or prevent one. And now, it was live. At Monstrum Air Force Base, General Marcus Wexler stood reviewing satellite overlays in the Drone Ops Center when his secure console blared an unfamiliar tone, shrill and absolute. He looked up sharply. The red-coded display was unmistakable. Priority Alpha. He hadn't seen that alert in over 15 years, and only once before, in northern Syria. His hand hovered over the terminal, breath caught in his throat. The last time he'd heard this signal, he'd been knee-deep in an operation that should have ended in blood. It didn't, because one pilot had broken ranks, because one pilot had seen what no drone could. Red Falcon. She had ignored orders, called off the strike, and saved his entire ground unit, including him. 44 lives spared because she had trusted her own eyes. Wexler's voice dropped low and steady. Freeze all UAV launches. I want every drone grounded, now. Operators turned, startled. Sir? No debates. Full stop on all operations, and get recon teams en route to every designated target zone. The room spun into motion. Questions flew, papers shuffled. Everyone looked confused, except Wexler. He knew what they didn't. That signal only came from someone with intimate knowledge of battlefield collateral risk. And if it came from her again, then everything they thought they knew was wrong. 28 minutes later, confirmation arrived. Major Santos stood stiff at the edge of the war room, headset still around his neck. Sir. Ground recon just reported. The target site is a refugee cluster. Approximately 70 civilians on site. 36 are minors. No militant activity confirmed. The silence was crushing. Wexler exhaled slowly, rubbing a hand across his jaw. Sheltering in what we marked for destruction? Yes, sir. Tents, concrete shelters. Full camp setup. The general's voice was quiet. We almost killed them. There was no shock. No drama. Just the sick certainty that everything Arden Cole had tried to warn them about was real, again. Abort every mission in Sector 7. Redesignate it as a protected zone. And get me a full audit on the intelligence that justified that strike. He didn't need to say who'd saved them this time. Above the base, the wind shifted. Lieutenant Harper watched as the Cessna slowly arced east, leaving the danger zone behind. His comms buzzed. Viper 1, new directive from Joint Command. Do not engage target. Repeat, do not engage. Pilot is confirmed friendly. Authorization level, highest. Harper blinked, then again. A pause, then. Escort civilian aircraft. Provide safe passage. He looked to his left and nudged his stick, easing into formation beside the aging Cessna. Now close enough to see inside the cockpit. There she was. Helmet off, eyes forward. Calm. A woman with skin like his mother's, posture like steel, and a history the military tried to erase. Red Falcon had come back, not for revenge, for something far harder, to save strangers who'd never know her name. She wore no ribbons, no uniform, just a leather flight jacket worn soft with time and a pair of mirrored sunglasses that hid more than just her eyes. From inside the F-16, Lieutenant Harper watched her fly, steady, graceful, every movement calculated with the ease of someone who had once ruled the sky. She guided the aging Cessna like it was an extension of her thoughts, banking effortlessly into escort formation beside his jet. Then she turned her head, just slightly, and raised 2 fingers in a crisp salute. No bravado. Just acknowledgement. One pilot to another. Harper returned the gesture without hesitation. He didn't need confirmation from command. He already knew who she was. She hadn't just averted disaster. She'd written herself into history. Again. At Malmstrom Air Force Base, word traveled faster than the jets. By the time Arden Cole's Cessna rolled down the tarmac, ground crews had gathered in silence, clustered along the edges of the civilian landing strip. Mechanics, instructors, pilots, officers. Nobody spoke. They didn't need to. Everyone could feel it. Something rare had just happened, something none of them would forget. A civilian plane, flown with near military precision, had just stopped a mistake that could have made global headlines for all the wrong reasons. And the woman stepping down from the cockpit wasn't a rogue pilot. She was a legend in exile. General Marcus Wexler stood near the edge of the runway, cap under his arm, lips pressed in a line. He hadn't seen her in 12 years, but he knew it was her the moment he heard the signal. She walked toward him, posture upright, still sharp in every movement. "Arden," he said quietly. Her reply was just as soft. "You've aged." "So have you." They both allowed a small, tired smile. "You saved a hell of a lot of people today," Wexler said, voice rough. If that signal hadn't come through, he trailed off. Neither of them needed to fill in the blank. Arden shook her head gently. "I'm not here to be thanked." She declined every interview, ignored the public affairs officer with the camera and clipboard. She didn't want the medal, the press conference, the applause. "I'm not here for that," she told Wexler later, as they stood beside her weathered aircraft. "I came because 70 people deserve to make it to tomorrow, that's all." Wexler nodded, eyes fixed on the horizon. "The system failed them today. Hell, it failed you back then too." Arden placed one hand on the plane's wing, fingers tracing the sun-warmed metal. "It's a system made by people, Marcus. We get things wrong, but we have to keep trying to get them right." Wexler reached into his coat and pulled out a sealed envelope. "Your discharge? I had it reviewed. They pushed you out for politics, not conduct. We can fix that. Reinstatement. Full pension. Rank." Arden looked at the envelope. She didn't reach for it. "I appreciate it," she said, "but I'm not looking to go back." "I'm not the same woman who wore that patch," Arden said quietly. Her voice was steady, but something behind it carried years of quiet weight. "And maybe that's why today even happened." She stepped back into the Cessna, hands moving across the controls with practiced calm. Her fingers flipped each switch like she was still in formation. No hesitation, no rust, just muscle memory. Out the windscreen, she saw the base's younger pilots lingering in the distance, heads tilted, curiosity in their eyes. Most didn't know her name. Some wouldn't even know what they were looking at. But they saw the way their general had stood beside her, no rank between them. As she finished her checks, General Wexler took a step forward. "Will we see you again?" he asked. Arden gave the faintest smile as the engines roared to life. "Only if you're lucky," she said, then paused. "And let's hope you won't need to." A few weeks later, in the pilot ready room, a new photo quietly appeared on the wall. It wasn't part of any official directive. No ceremony marked its arrival. It was just there. Tucked among the photos of air wings and decorated squadrons, a small frame showed a Cessna in open sky, a faded red Falcon insignia on its wing, wings arched in silent dive. Beneath it, a simple line. Red Falcon. Flew not for orders, but for conscience. The photo didn't need explanation. But when new cadets asked, they were told, quietly, about the woman who had returned without rank, without permission, and without hesitation. They spoke of how she saw what satellites missed, how she saved people no one else had known were in danger, how she'd walked away from a system that failed her, and still came back to protect it. Her name wasn't printed on recruitment posters, her story wasn't used for morale campaigns, but in hushed voices and quiet reverence, every pilot came to understand what she meant. Because Arden Cole hadn't come back for glory. She'd come back for people. She didn't need medals. She didn't need a title. She didn't even need to be welcomed. What she needed, what she chose, was to act. To stop a disaster that never made headlines. To remind everyone that the greatest missions aren't assigned, they're chosen. Her legacy wouldn't live in files or folded flags. It would live in the 70 souls who woke up the next morning with their families still whole. It would live in the young pilots who watched her land and realized what integrity looked like. It would live in the memory of one moment, where a single person stepped in when everyone else stepped back. Courage isn't about uniforms. It isn't about being right. It's about doing what's right. Even if you're the only one who sees it. And sometimes, the greatest victories are the tragedies no one ever has to witness. Because someone brave enough chose to stop them.